everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches in Havana, Cuba. I'm joined by Dr. Vicente Vérez Bencomo. He's the General Director of the Finlay Vaccine Institute in Havana. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for coming here.
So this is one of, I think, 5 vaccines that have been developed in Cuba. And I know this vaccine in particular faced some challenges due to raw materials that were needed that took a little bit longer to get because of the blockade. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges you faced while developing this vaccine as a result of the US blockade?
Certainly it's probably one of the nicest story in my life, in my professional life, because certainly our people were so motivated what they were doing. That certainly we were really able to face everything, every challenge, and not to quit, never, what we want to do. And certainly we have there are negative experience where we were waiting for, we buy something, we pay something without a lot of money, we pay something, we pay more expensive what we need to get. And then to receive, after a couple of months, somebody say, oh, we cannot deliver this to you. Mm-hmm. And then you need to start again with another company to try to buy the same or similar. And don't quit in order to find who can sell you this that usually you buy before the pandemic. So this makes our life more difficult. But on the other hand, there are people. I don't know. In the case of Soberana, we have a collaboration of many countries. Mm-hmm. We have a collaboration of China. We have some very nice co-workers that participate in our co-development from China. We have a participant from France. Mm. We have a participant from Italy, from Netherlands. We have, of course, the participation of the Pasteur Institute of Iran that really have a very, very strong scientific capabilities. And then taking together, when you have this type of collaboration, taking together, you always found a way to either to go around, either to jump, either to pass the difficulties. Certainly, there were situations where, for example, we tried to. There were something that was needed in academic terms. I will not mention exactly what university, but we start working. It was a very nice project, scientific project. That was not completely directed with the vaccine itself, but was associated with the vaccine. And then academically, it was a very nice project. And we found the best specialists that were very motivated. We have a video conference. We explain what we want from them and what part of our project they will fill. And they were very motivated. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly I received an email saying, okay, we need to make a consultation with the technology transfer of our university. It maybe takes some time.
Okay. And
then we were waiting. And then we receive a document for this technology transfer. And when we saw this document, I said, I will never sign that because they put us in a situation like certainly that all the bad things that can happen will be our responsibility and all the good things that will happen will be their responsibility. So this is not, it was not. So we just stopped. It was a pity because usually scientific community, the freedom of the exchange with the scientific community. I don't like to say Americans because we are also Americans.
Of course.
We are all Americans. For you people coming from North America, from US, you usually are very proud of democratic values. But democratic values are this also. It's the freedom of exchange for science, for scientific community. And this freedom of exchange is it's not only one direction, it's in both direction. And that's certainly scientific community always, what we achieve in the world with this pandemic is a result of the freedom of communication between the scientists and the freedom of sharing the advance of science in some way. So certainly this is also part of the democratic value that certainly in my opinion we are very proud also of that.
And I know that there was also the syringe shortage that took place. I mean, do you think with the challenges that you did face, obviously you did get these vaccines developed and you got them distributed, but there was a lag in time. I mean, are there deaths that maybe could have been prevented had it not been for the various obstacles that you had to get past throughout the development process?
Yes, certainly. Certainly, you need to understand that as everybody, what we did is to make what usually takes 50 years, we did in 1.5. Everybody that developed a vaccine and a vaccine that is in use did what usually takes 15 years in 1.5 years. And certainly when we enjoy very much to this research and development part of the project. They just come to a conclusion quite fast. We were certainly we make progress quickly, but certainly establish a production of such a complex, because this Soberana 02 is the most complex vaccine among the 5 vaccines that we develop in Cuba. Mm-hmm. Because this vaccine has at least two different components, and these 2 different components need to be produced in 2 different institutions, in 2 different facilities. And then additionally, you need to have to join these 2 components chemically. And this chemically linkage between these 2 components is another very complex process. And certainly this is what we did at the end at the Finlay Vaccine Institute. We are expert on doing that. Mm. That's why the vaccine is called conjugate. And certainly to make this in a large scale was a big challenge. It was certainly a big challenge. But anyway, there were 3 or 4 months when the lack of resources, of financial resources for doing that was an important problem, because to produce this type of vaccine is expensive. We need some resources for buying in advance all the components, all the raw material that we need to use, and this take more time than we expected. So that's why we experienced some gaps in the middle. We were almost ready to use the vaccine in somewhere in July, but our production was not ready until September. So that's why certainly.
That's 2 months. It's 2 months.
These 2 month gaps were something that certainly we suffer a lot on that. But anyway, you are making a vaccine for prevent something, mm-hmm. and you are responsible of the quality of that vaccine. And your responsibility is not to do any harm. Mm-hmm. So certainly you cannot produce a vaccine just avoiding any step. All the steps that are needed are your responsibility. So that's why we try to speed up everything. But the first big batches of the Soberana 02 were ready only in early September, and then so fortunately we developed other vaccines that will start to be used in our adult population earlier. So that's helped a lot our country. So we are happy also of that. But certainly we were ready. That's why we are also proud. We were ready for the moment. We get emergency use authorization in children 4 September, mm-hmm. and we start immunization on 5 September.
Wow.
One day after. So we have everything ready.
Ready to go, yeah.
Everything ready for starting that. So we were very proud because the first children below 10 years that were immunized for COVID in the world as a campaign were immunized in the Cienfuegos province on September 7. Because September 5 we start with the teenagers. But then after looking at the safety of the large scale vaccination, then we decide to start mass vaccination of children below 10, from 2 to 10. So we were really very happy to be able to be the first really to start on September 7 the vaccination, mass vaccination of our children.
How do you see this vaccine as a part of Cuban sovereignty?
Yeah, the name. The name, I suppose you understand the name in Spanish means sovereign.
I actually didn't know that.
No?
It means sovereign.
Sovereign?
Yeah.
Yes. And the name, you know, it's funny how the name came. You know, we get a call from the Cuban president somewhere in May that he asked us, okay, certainly we will not be the first to have the vaccine for COVID-19. But anyway, we need to have sovereignty in our decision of using the vaccine and making available the vaccine for our own population. So that was a call for sovereignty. And then of course we worked very hard. We worked very hard from this moment. And then we were ready on August, early August, we were ready to start to get the permission for the first phase 1 clinical trial. It was with Soberana 1, it was another one, easier at that time. And then we called, you know, all the clinical trial has a name. And people that develop this clinical trial, it has a full name. Oh, this is phase 1 clinical trial, open label, it's very long. And then usually they ask to have a short name. And then the short name was Soberana. Mm-hmm. But when we start this clinical trial, people surrounding us, volunteers coming, the press, the media, everything. They start naming the vaccine. Oh, we start the clinical trial of Soberana vaccine. And it was, you know, it was like when you are in the mountain and the snow start falling.
Avalanche.
Yeah. And then you have avalanche. It was impossible to change the name. Impossible to change the name. Impossible, absolutely impossible. And then we start Soberana 1. But then we were thinking about, okay, we will have Soberana 2, more complex, it takes a little more time, with phase 1 starting in October. But then in the meantime we say, if we will have the chance of success, if at the end of the line we have only one vaccine, the name of the vaccine will be Soberana. We cannot change because the people want to call that Soberana. So that's why our decision was, okay, it will be Soberana 01, Soberana 02, and then Soberana Plus. It means that at the end of the line, if only one stay there, we will call Soberana. So that's more or less the origin of that. And certainly this name was very, very care for normal, for simple people. It was very good, this name, so we are very proud of that also.
So this vaccine, well, at least some of the Cuban vaccines are being given to other countries. Do you see this vaccine or other Cuban vaccines as possibly something that developing countries, that other countries in the global south can have access to and use to help with their COVID problem in a way that perhaps the vaccines from America can't help?
To US, surely not. But for example, In the case of Soberana Plus, we performed a clinical trial with Italians. There was Italian volunteers. We were trying to make the clinical trial there as a universal booster. People that receive other vaccine, for example, there were people receiving Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and they want to get the booster shot. So this booster shot, they want to have Soberana, and then they come to Cuba. We immunize with Soberana, and this was a joint clinical trial by the Italian hospital, Amadeo di Savoia, and the Cuban hospital here. So this is an example of that this is not only a solution for developing countries. Of course, this will be a solution for an additional solution, because there is not one solution for developing countries. There will be an additional solution for developing countries, but this is also a solution for rich countries. The problem is that you have a protectionism for that. I mean that, for example, I will take an example, a clear example. We receive important Italian officials that came to Cuba, came to our institution early this week, and we were discussing with them. And certainly, this is very difficult to get European medicine agents license to use a vaccine produced in Cuba to be used in Europe. Because everything is organized to avoid that.
Yeah.
Okay? Everything is organized in order to keep the European market or the North American market, I mean the rich countries market, to keep this market to big pharma. No smaller or coming from poor countries entering there, and there is a lot of barriers to avoid that, and this is difficult to overcome that. But then there is very sad, because certainly, for example, what you have in Italy. In Italy, you don't have any vaccines for children from 2 to 5. Because Pfizer and Moderna, they failed to prove that they are not approved for 2 to 5. And the only real vaccine approved and successfully used for children from 2 to 5 is Soberana 2. This makes a difference. It make a difference in important sense. You take statistically from 15 December to 15 January, 38 Italian children died from COVID.
Wow.
December, January, 0 Cuban children died from COVID. And the difference is that, certainly. And this difference made no sense. We will not use this vaccine because of the quality or the quality. We don't trust the quality. So certainly there is not sense. And this make us has an advantage on that direction. So we are working with Italian companies to try to overcome this difficulty and to find a way to be able to make this vaccine available also for Europe. For Europe, we have also discussion with Canada that they are very interested also in having this type of vaccine, because this is a typical pediatric vaccine. So certainly at the end of the line, we will need to protect children, because children are an important part of the transmission chain. And once the COVID-19 will become endemic, and we will have a wide circulation of this, so we need to protect our children, because they are maybe the severe cases are not so frequent, but for those who die from that, for the family that lose children, this is 100%. There is not a statistical there. You cannot say, there are statistically there's only a small number of children. No, for the family that loses children, this is everything. everything. So therefore, in my opinion, there is a lot of sense to try to immunize children, to protect children, and certainly without any special. I must say, I don't know if you say chauvinism in English.
Chauvinist.
Without any chauvinism, I must say that certainly we are ready to discuss with any scientific community that certainly this is the best option for the children.
Do you feel like, from what you're saying, it sounds like perhaps there are obstacles to getting this vaccine's the licenses necessary because of not just the U.S. but the big pharmaceutical monopolies.
Yes.
That want every market to be like submitted to them.
You know, everything is organized for that. Certainly, the quality of producing vaccine is every year increasing, and this is a good thing. I agree that the quality producing a vaccine for prevention of something. The vaccine is something that is to be applied for somebody that is not sick. Mm-hmm. It's different for treatment of cancer. Here you are talking about something that you will apply to a big part of a population, and this part of the population is healthy. So this is something that needs to be really, the quality of that should be very high.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. But the quality is, there are something that clearly has an impact on the quality. But there are another things that has no such an exact relationship with the quality, but rather with the competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because if the bar is higher, it makes more difficult for smaller or poorer to compete with the big pharma. So that's why there is interest to raise year by year the quality standard. And this raising has two components. One component is better quality. Mm-hmm. But the second line is just to avoid competition and to make more difficult things for competition. So that's why this is the world where we live now. And unfortunately, a lot of countries in the developing world follow what international we say, and it's happened frequently that in many poor countries you don't use a product with the quality maybe enough mm-hmm. to prevent something because you don't meet the very high standard established for that.
Yeah.
And sometimes this country prefer to have people dying than to use something that maybe has not the topest quality. It's like I usually say that several countries prefer, if we don't have a Mercedes, we don't want another car.
Right.
We want a Mercedes. And but many problems can be solved according to the situation. There is not this high standard for many things. There are other options, and these other options can be in some way taken into account.
Are you having a difficult time getting the World Health Organization to license this vaccine the way it has licensed or approved, I should say, of Moderna and Pfizer? And do you have any ideas of why that might be taking longer for the Cuban vaccines?
Okay. So you need to understand that application to World Health Organization pre-qualification or approval is a process. It's a process. Like every process, this is a process also. It's a process that is quite complex because they require a big file on that direction, and then the standard of the World Health Organization are quite high anyway. So we are moving on this direction. So mm-hmm. we are, in our case, in the case of Soberana, so we file, because this is the same file, we file for the approval in Iran, We get this approval. We file for the approval, for example, in other countries, in Nicaragua, in Venezuela, in other countries, we get this approval. We apply in Mexico. We apply in Argentina. We are waiting. We are moving in this process because usually this is a lengthy process where you apply, you have a file, you apply that, and then you get questions, and then you respond to that questions, and it will take 1 month to analyze, to discuss all this discussion, and then back. So this is a process of interaction, and like every examination, because at the end of the line, this is an examination. Every examination is different. It depends a lot of how the bar is established by the examinator, and on the specificities. So that's why we, as I tell you, we have several places where we get emergency use authorization, and we are working for registration. Other places when we just apply, and we are in the process of discussion. Vietnam also, we are in the process of discussion with them. And then, according to this license, we have permission or not to use the vaccine in some, either in these countries or even in a group of countries. So World Health Organization is a wider possibility for many countries, but it's not the only one.
I see.
If you want to commercialize something in Europe, World Health Organization is not enough. You have to have a license for European Medicine Agents. So this is the different process. It's also another process of examination. So in general, it depends. So in our case, we establish a contact with the World Health Organization. We establish some pre-meetings with them in order to know exactly what we need to do, and then we are now moving. We plan to apply, because this is a two application. One application for Soberana 2 and one application for Soberana Plus. In the case of Soberana 2, it's application mainly for children, because we need that. We think that our main contribution is for children worldwide, because there are other vaccines for adults. We will also try to use in adults, but this will be mainly for children. We believe that in children, certainly we have the more important space. And in the case of Soberana Plus, we apply as a booster dose for universal booster dose for other vaccine, especially important for inactivated vaccine, because a lot of people in the world receive inactivated vaccine, pharma, CoronaVac, or other vaccine. And in that particular case, we believe that this is a very, very good booster dose for that type of vaccine. So that's why there are two separate files. So we are moving this two separate files also for EMA. I don't know if you say EMA in English or yes, EMA in English. And then we are a World Health Organization, and we are working also with EMA. We are contacting also with the Italian regulatory agency. So we are working worldwide. You don't need to take World Health Organization recognition and something especially different than anything else. You have national authorities. We are working on that easier. So we are working. At the beginning, we are working also with World Health Organization. We are working also with the European emergency. We are working with Health Canada also to make maybe clinical trials or also production in Canada of that. So we are working on that on very wide spectra of activities. And World Health Organization is one of these options that certainly we pay a lot of attention.
So I don't know if you've been following the conversation on the U.S. or Western left, but there is obviously a lot of very understandable, opposition to big pharma in the West that dominates and monopolizes the global market on medicines and vaccines. But that has extended into a segment of the left being opposed to Western vaccines. Maybe they'll say the Cuban vaccine is fine, but we don't trust Pfizer, we don't trust Moderna, and they're kind of promoting vaccine hesitancy. So what's your response to that attitude towards Western vaccines?
Yeah, okay. Let me see how I explain that. Because it's difficult to put myself in the position of a U.S. citizen. Mm-hmm. Certainly, vaccine hesitancy has a lot of reason. So it's very difficult to enter in this discussion. But there are political reasons. There are certainly some questions, because you know when you have a big pharma and you see what is the first objective of a big pharma is to make more revenues. Mm-hmm. And then a consequence is to make more health. Mm-hmm. But this is a consequence. This is not the main objective. And certainly when you see like that, you have reason to be
suspicious.
Yes, suspicious. So this is so that's why for me it's difficult to put myself in that position, because certainly it's a complex social phenomenon. Mm-hmm. that is not politically, but has something linked to politics. So that is understandable in some way. I must say that in the case of COVID-19, there is statistically it's clear that vaccinated people, the risk benefit of being vaccinated is certainly very well with any vaccines that were developed for COVID-19, no matter where they came from. And certainly you have less risk to become sick, and especially to become death or to become severely ill if you are vaccinated. So this is today this is clear. But certainly I want to add another perspective for myself. You almost don't have any vaccine hesitancy in Cuba. You have something.
Yeah, you vaccinated 90% of your population, right?
You know, there is people believing that the earth is flat. Today. There are also people thinking like that in Cuba.
Wow.
So certainly, if you have people believing, I'm sorry, but those people listening to me. But if you have people believing that the earth is flat today, certainly you can find anything in the way of thinking. But we have a very low vaccine hesitancy in Cuba. And why? Take, for example, institutions like us. For our institution, the first is health. The first objective is health. Certainly, we are an institution organizing in the way that as a company, in order that we need to get resource, we need to sell, we need to get money, especially to support the health problem in Cuba. Mm-hmm. Because we are a company organizing in a way that when we export, part of this money is used to get the materials to produce the vaccine that Cuban population needs. So this is our organization. So in some way, we are also associated with revenues. Mm-hmm. But that's a secondary. Don't think about this is complete secondary. We will never sacrifice the first objective, never. Because certainly this is the way we were educated, and this is the way we think. Politically also, but the way we think. And take myself, I will explain myself, maybe you will understand very easily. The institution where you are, the Finlay Vaccine Institute, it was named first Finlay Institute. And Finlay Institute was created because we get in the 80s of the last century, we experienced a very important outbreak of meningitis B. And meningitis B, it was terrifying parents, because usually children that get meningitis B, you can imagine healthy infants 1 hour later fever, 2 hours after that death. You can imagine for parents to get your baby, what is more important for you, suddenly in 2 hours, the transit from health to death. And then we get a call. The scientific community of Cuba get a call. There is no vaccine for meningitis B in the world. We need to get something. And then there was a team of scientists that developed this meningitis B vaccine. And this meningitis B vaccine was successful in stopping this outbreak. Myself, I was studying abroad. I made my PhD in France. I came back to Cuba, beginning in the 80s, and my daughter, my first daughter, born in 84. In the middle of the outbreak, we were really terrified.
Of course.
Of that. And then, of course, when at the end of the 80s, we stopped this outbreak. My daughter was vaccinated, immunized. And then people understand the value of vaccination. And I decided, I was not working on the vaccine at that time. I was so motivated that I decided myself, I will dedicate all my life to develop vaccine. From the chemical, I am chemist, from the chemical point, from the molecular point of view. For this is the motivation, this is something that the society don't forget. Because the vaccine is something that gives you confidence back. Because you have fear, this is something that in this pandemic, despite the vaccines came from the big pharma, came from China, came from Russia, came from in the political battle somewhere. This is something that the humanity need to recognize, is that we will really sort out of this pandemic is thanks to the vaccine. This is something that we need, the media need to really do in the way the people understand that the vaccines save the humanity, that otherwise will be, I don't know for how many years we will be facing this problem. Because certainly this is quite different. The last pandemic that we experienced in 1920 of the influenza pandemic. The influenza pandemic was not worse because the war where we live a century ago was not a globalized war. And now with our globalized war, with such a communication between people, certainly there is impossible to stop the spread of such a transmissible virus. So certainly we will be finishing that successfully, mainly thanks to the vaccines. So this is something that the humanity we need to make an effort in order for the humanity to recognize that and not to believe that the year is flat or there is a chip inside the vaccine or there is something, because this is certainly there are so many things of that type that certainly without any evidence, without any certainly goes against the big success that were the vaccine faced the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, Dr. Vicente, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for you.